everyone. Let's call this meeting to order. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. We're going to get a COVID-19 update. We're going to talk about the SJC Community Safety Initiative, have a follow-up policy, a discussion on the family leave policy, get a CIP project update, discuss the Avidim grant of easement to MSD, and last, I have an update on the Pratt and Whitney economic development announcement. Are there any other items that any commissioners want to have on the agenda for our briefing this afternoon? All right. Then this will be our agenda. Let's move into it, and we'll start off with the COVID-19 update. And Stacy Saunders is here, and possibly with other folks as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Thank you all for having me. I'll be talking through the data that you're used to seeing and also introducing a metrics tool today for you all to become familiar with and then that we'll begin using. And before we dive into that, I wanted to take just a few moments to go through some of the data. As you've probably seen in the news, that North Carolina is seeing an increase in new cases, and test positivity is staying stable right now based on the most current governor update, which happened today. So here in Buncombe, our cumulative case count is 4,443. And since the end of September, the new cases have continued to increase. You may remember us talking that through the summer, we had the highest, we had a high number of new cases per day, around 40 to 45 new cases per day on average. And we saw that decrease to 20 to 25 through September. And then as we approached the end of September and as we started October, we've seen that new case per day average increase again to about 38 new cases per day now. We continue to see the greatest burden of confirmed cases in our 25 to 49-year-olds. That's making up about 41% of the laboratory confirmed cases. About 20% of our confirmed cases are in 65 years and older. However, that age group makes up about 89% of our COVID-related net deaths, with the largest, the overwhelming majority within that being associated with long-term care facilities. And just to blow that up a little bit for you, so if we zoom in, that's just a zoom in of what I just described, that July saw increasing cases with a decrease as we got to September, and now an increase again. Our communicable disease case investigation team continues to find that folks, as they're interacting in small groups, that the 3 Ws are not being adhered, particularly social distancing. Folks aren't keeping 6 feet between themselves. Just important for folks to listen and hear that we reduce our risk of transmission and exposure when we keep that distance of 6 feet or more between us. And when we add the face coverings and hand washing, often we further reduce that risk. And just want folks to remember that this includes when we are with people we may know but not in our immediate household. So when we're interacting with folks in our neighborhood and our social circles, we still need to maintain face coverings and 6 feet and hand washing to reduce our risk. And that, of course, applies when we're interacting and moving about our community. So based on our weekly testing reports, we are seeing a percent positivity of about 4%. Currently, the state is 6.6%. This percent positivity remains below 5, but has increased in the last few weeks and is consistently between that 4 and 4.5 range in the last few weeks. Our testing within the community has increased since the summer. Over the summer, we were averaging about 4,000 tests administered per week. And the 4-week average now has us at about 5,800 tests per week. And to date, the community as a whole has administered more than over 100,000 COVID tests. And then the COVID-like illness, this is that early indicator. Just a reminder that we are that bright yellow at the bottom, and you can see that Region 6, which is where we are, has seen a decrease in the percent of emergency department visits for COVID-like illness the week ending October 24th. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce the metrics, a new way of looking at our data here in Buncombe County. And so these metrics align with what are commonly referred when folks talk about the White House Task Force metrics or the CDC metrics. And the color gradient allows us to see where our local metrics then fall within those more favorable to less favorable areas. And what we've done here, you'll see the actual metric over to your left, which some of them are very familiar to you, others less, but we've monitored them over time. So new cases per 100,000 population per week. Typically, we talk about the new cases per day on average, and this actually is a metric that the White House Task Force measures across jurisdictions. The percent change in the new cases, so that's just a derived indicator from 1 week to the next. Did you change in those new cases per 100,000 population per week? And then the diagnostic test result positivity rate, that's the percent positivity that we've talked about. And then the change in test positivity is just that 1 week over the other. And then the total diagnostic test resulted per 100,000. And so that is derived from the number of tests that we do weekly in our community. And then you'll see the COVID deaths per 100,000 population, and looking at it per 100,000 population just allows us to standardize those deaths so that we can compare across jurisdictions. At a local level, that isn't quite as meaningful as it is if you're looking at them for the entire state and being able to compare and contrast across jurisdictions and counties. And then percent change in deaths per 100,000 population. And the last two are in terms of hospitalizations, percent inpatient hospitalization beds occupied with COVID-19, and then the percent ICU beds occupied with COVID-19. And then those gradients off to...
I guess, yeah.
I'm sorry, is there a question?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're good.
And then the gradients off to the right there are just based on different ranges from most favorable being clearly dark green and light green to less favorable being your red, orange and red. And so what we've done here is put, where you see the value column, we've put our local Buncombe County data in there, current data. And so you can see that our new cases per 100,000 per week is red. It is currently 101, and so that is right there at the beginning of that red gradient. This is a decrease from last week, and so you can see that in the derived indicator just below the percent change in new cases per 100,000. That from last week to this week, we've seen a 9% decrease that puts us in that yellow area. And it's a little too early to tell if this is a true trend downward. We'd probably want to watch that for another week or so to be sure. And the percent positivity on our weekly testing report is at 4%, and you can see that puts us in that light green area. As we've mentioned before, less than 5 is what is desired. And so the light green is that 3.0 to 4.9, and then dark green would be the less than 3%. So we're light green there, and then change in test positivity, we saw just a slight decrease, which puts us also in that yellow, and percent positivity from last week to this week. And then the total diagnostic tests resulted per 100,000, we're at 2,095, which puts us squarely sort of in that dark green. And that's a result of that commitment from our community to increase access. So as I mentioned earlier, we've seen an increase in the weekly testing administered since the summer. The total, so the COVID deaths per 100,000 population per week, that is in an orange area, that's 1.9. Again, that metric is standardized so that you can compare it across jurisdictions. And then the percent change in deaths per 100,000 is at 35.7, which puts us in red. And when we talk about small data sets and when we talk from week to week about new COVID-related deaths, I just want to make sure that folks understand that those are very small numbers and affected greatly by any aberration, plus or minus. And so I just want to use some caution there that we will likely see, because of the small data, the small numbers there, the small absolute numbers there, that data metrics could change quite a bit from week to week. It's the difference between having 2 COVID-related deaths and having 4, right? Small numbers. And then the percent inpatient hospital beds occupied by COVID and percent ICU beds occupied with COVID-19, both of those are in the green area. And you'll remember that Dr. Hathaway came the last time and joined me, that right now hospital capacity is sufficient. And so I'm going to explain this just a little bit about how we'll start using this tool, and then ask for your questions or feedback about the tool. And so when you look at the tool completely with all of the indicators or all the metrics together, what we would be using the tool for is to monitor that from week to week. You will be seeing this each time that we present to you. And if we find that 5 or more of those metrics, so at least half or more of those metrics are in orange or red as a collective, recommendations would be brought to the Board of Commissioners at that time. In addition, if we were to see 3 or more metrics in that first section of orange or red, regardless of what the rest of the group look like, recommendations would be brought to the Board of Commissioners. And also, if we were to see the 2 indicators at the section 3, which are the hospitalization pieces, if those were in orange or red, we would be bringing recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. And before I wrap up, I just wanted to show this infographic that the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services put together as just another reminder that when we use our face coverings, have social distancing, and add our sanitizing or washing our hands, we have the lowest chance of transmission, and that anything other than that increases our risk. So with that, I'll stop and ask if you have questions or feedback.
Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, I just got one comment. I wish we'd had the not graph, but the
Metrics?
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I think it's a good way. It's a good way to look at it. I mean, it's red, yellow, green is known in across the board and in measuring, and but I thought that was good. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
And all of these metrics are measured on a per week basis?
That's correct.
Okay.
And so the metrics are, as I said, they're White House Task Force metrics, and then the hospitalization pieces are CDC metrics. So it's a hybrid of those 2, but the gradients follow the White House Task Force and CDC gradients, and they are measured weekly. So on the North Carolina dashboard, there's when you look for the filter for Buncombe County, you can actually see for new cases per 100,000. So you can see that actually daily. What we would be looking at is that week-to-week trend at a set time, so that you all were seeing the exact same thing every time.
What would be have you decided on what the set time will be? So it's from this date to this date, the same time and date every week?
Thank you. Great question. So you all are meeting at a different time this time with a Thursday. So ideally, what we would be doing is the data would be pulled on Monday to look at what our trends are. So it would be a Monday to Monday, and would be ready for presentation to you all on your regular Tuesdays, 1st and 3rd. Now, we'll be updating it each week, but you'll see it at these community briefings.
Okay, so every Monday, there'll be sort of a new public report issued summarizing this data.
This is the report that we use for public health and for the command center.
Okay, but that'll be publicly released whether we're having a meeting or not, there'll be a release of this metric for that week.
Our intent is to present it here publicly for you all and for the community at the community briefings.
Okay, right, so once a week, regardless of whether this commission's meeting, there'll be a report.
No, I think the intent was just publicly here on the 1st and the 3rd
Okay, just so every
to
other
align
week.
with our community briefings.
Okay, so just every other week.
Right.
But you will check it. Let me ask it this way. You will internally do this every Monday. Is that correct, to kind of get a sense for what it looks like?
This is a part of our weekly command center update.
So what if we're not meeting and you run the numbers and it's like, wow, we've got 5 oranges and reds. The commission's not meeting tomorrow, but that's our report for the week says, we're not in the right place.
Commissioners, if we were to get a report that had 5 or any of the metrics that we had out 3 or 2 in the other sections, we will be making sure we reach out to you if it's a special meeting, but you would be involved because at 5, we need to bring some recommendations around what we do in our community around restrictions or what does that look like. So should any of those triggers happen, we'll be reaching out to the commission.
Okay. Is there any way this could be shared with the commission weekly? Whatever that Monday is, just to sort of circulate it, so we would see, even though we're not meeting the next day, here's what it looks like compared to a week ago. Is that possible?
Yes, I will send that out to you at the end of the day on Mondays.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
perfect. Other questions, commissioners?
Just kind of a related question is there a sense yet of kind of the complexion of the flu season this year, or any early indications what we're seeing with that?
Thanks for that question. Really early. And so I didn't pull the influenza-like illness surveillance report, but I will say very early, and I'm not getting a lot of indication of lots of flu right now. I'll turn to Dr. M to make Dr. Mullendore to be sure, but not quite yet.
I think when I got my flu shot from the county, I think someone mentioned it there, or maybe it was somewhere else. I forget where I heard this from, but it was mentioned, I think, because of the way flu spreads around the world. So it starts in other parts of the flu season starts in other parts of the world sooner than here. That there's perhaps some sense that the flu season is maybe not as going to be maybe it won't be as bad this year as in some years. So could you just comment on that? Do we have some tea leaves from what's happening in other parts of the world to give us a sense of whether, aside from COVID, flu might be bad, typical, or, maybe not as bad?
So I think you heard that from Dr. Hathaway when he
That's
visited
right.
and presented with me the last time.
Right.
And that typically we do look at what flu looked like in the Southern Hemisphere to project what it might look like here. And I think when he was here, he mentioned that trends in that area were looking lower, but yet to be determined here, as we have just begun our flu season. And Dr. Mullendore, do you have anything to add?
And what I think, when we look at what's happened in the Southern Hemisphere and why, the thoughts about why they had a pretty easy and mild flu season is because there was a lot of uptake of the mitigation strategies for COVID, right? They had a lot of buy-in on face coverings and social distancing. And so it really is going to come down to how well we do in this country. I'll say the numbers on COVID aren't looking so great. And so it concerns me about what that means for flu. And so I think that if we can do better with the face coverings and the social distancing, we'll have an easier flu season, and we'll also have success against COVID.
So the flu wasn't necessarily less aggressive. It's
Right.
just that the things that you can do to protect yourself from COVID protect from that
Right.
too, and people are working on that in a way that we don't traditionally, and that had a co-benefit.
Correct. So,
Great, thank you.
And that's a great opportunity just to remind you, if you haven't, and I'm glad you mentioned that you had gotten yours, if you haven't gotten your flu vaccine, please do. And we're recommending that folks get their flu vaccine.
Great. Commissioners, any other questions? Well, thank you for this. I will
Thank
just
you.
echo, I think this is going to be a great tool for us to continue to monitor what's happening in the community and take steps if we're seeing flags go up. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is the SJC Community Safety Initiative. And Aisha Shepard is here to talk to us about this.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of our Justice Services Department. My name is Aisha Shepard, and I'm a Community Development Specialist. I'm also a facilitator with the Safety and Justice Challenge Community Engagement Workgroup. So I'm here today to talk to you about the Community Safety Initiative, which is heavily informed by the work that's occurred with the Safety and Justice Challenge Community Engagement Workgroup and our Safety and Justice Challenge Racial Equity Workgroup. To give you a little bit of background, if you can recall, back in 2018, Buncombe County received a grant in the amount of $1.75 million from the John D. and Catherine MacArthur Foundation. The goal of this grant was to reduce Buncombe County's jail population while also addressing the main drivers of our jail population. So looking at racial disparities and also increasing community engagement. What you see here on the next screen, I do want to give you some background to take a look at some of the data in Buncombe County as we're talking about community violence. So both violence and the justice system has disparate impacts on Black people living in Buncombe County. In the first 7 months of 2020, there were 9 homicides. 7 of those victims were Black men. In 2019, Black people represented 6.3% of Buncombe County's population, yet they comprised of 25% of the jail population and 69% of gun violence victims. COVID-19 jail reduction efforts led dramatically to reducing our jail population by 40%, or 158 people. While both Black and white people were released, the rate of disparity within the population increased, resulting in Blacks representing 33% of the average daily population in July of 2020. Now that we've had an opportunity to look at the data in Buncombe County, I would like to bring community's voice into this. So the Safety and Justice Challenge Community Engagement Workgroup hosted a series of listening sessions titled Let's Talk Justice. This was an opportunity for community to bring their voices into this space and talk about what they felt like were important issues in their communities. So we had an opportunity to go out to Barnardsville Big Ivy Community Center. We also went to Pisgah Apartments in Asheville. We went to Asheville Middle School and other places. What you see here, the bullet points, are problems that the community identified in their community. Community said that there is violence and shootings in their community. They also said that there is systemic poverty and lack of jobs and resources as a root cause of criminal activity. They felt like there's different treatment based on race or wealth, and there's a fear of retaliation of reporting criminal activity. There's a need to provide a bigger platform and connection to positive role models within communities most impacted by violence. There's a lack of trust in the education system related to the opportunity gap and school-to-prison pipeline. Community said that there is confusion about how our criminal justice system works, and last but not least, that there are roadblocks to restoring life based on having a criminal record. Other efforts that has been taken as as we're talking about work in the community, our racial equity work group with our Safety and Justice Challenge. So this is a cross-collaborative group that has conducted a deep analysis on our jail racial disparities. What the work group has learned is that not only have they learned, but they've also acknowledged institutional and structural racism is in housing, education, economic, health. The criminal justice policies and practices have led to disparate outcomes. This brings me to my next slide. So as a result of the work that has been done in 2019 with community, there are some action steps that have been taken. As you can see here, Buncombe County did bring a racial equity training to Buncombe County with the Racial Equity Institute. There's also been a child fatality review team with Buncombe County where they identified gun violence as a growing threat to the health and youth and adults in our community. And then our Justice Resource Advisory Council, our justice leaders, passed a proclamation declaring racism as a public safety emergency. Now I want to specifically talk about this community safety initiative. This proposal will specifically focus on community safety and gun violence. There is an amount of $225,000 in funding from the Safety and Justice Challenge grant. Justice Services are seeking proposals for community organization or organizations to holistically promote community safety and reduce gun violence. So what you see here, there are 2 deliverables that we're asking from organizations. The first one is the development of a comprehensive plan. What that entails is that we're asking a community organization to lead our government officials and community partners through a strategic planning process to develop a comprehensive plan that addresses community safety and reduces gun violence. The second deliverable is a program or an initiative working directly with communities most impacted by gun violence. What you see here is 2 different plans. So an organization can either apply for to do both deliverables, or they can collaborate and take on one and work with community to do the others. So next steps, the request for proposals will open on Monday, November 9th. Then there will be a selection of review committee, which will include members from the Safety and Justice Challenge work groups. That's going to occur on November 16th. Proposals are due at 12 p.m. on December 3rd, and then there is a proposal selection process that will occur. The announcement of the award will take place on December 15th, and then the contract period will start from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Commissioners, questions?
I just got a couple comments. So I appreciate the the information. I go back to the one of the first slides that has the lack of jobs, resources, some of the root causes and roadblocks to restoring life after having a criminal record. I'd mentioned some of that before in the last meeting, trying to elevate that conversation a little bit. So I hope that conversation continues to be lifted up. People that I think the best way that you can change, one of the ways you can help change someone's life is one is to be there for them and to be able to put them back into, I don't like to really use the word society, but put them back into just a normal walk of life, that some people have the opportunity to enjoy and others may not. And so, it's good work, and I appreciate you bringing this to us today. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
So I just have a comment, I guess, maybe before you. Thank you for sharing this information with us. Is there any action needed from the County Commission on this?
No, sir, this was for awareness only. This is money that's already been, it's your oversight money from the grant, but this is grant funds that we would repurpose to do that.
Great. Well, I want to say I'm really glad this is happening. Thank you for all your work in this. I think this is one of the most important issues that we don't talk about enough in our community. Just the lack of safety that so many families experience in, most parts of Buncombe County are very safe places to live, and that's great. But we have neighborhoods in our community
Right.
that are not safe. And, and we don't, I think part of the struggle is, we don't want to come at this with the approach of let's just throw this most law enforcement resources to this as we can, and because we do want to safely reduce our jail population. So the police are part of the solution, but not just by cracking down on crime. We got to think in other ways about this. So I'm really glad we're doing this process. I'm excited about what ideas might emerge from this. I'm glad I'm appreciative of all the folks who worked on getting these grant resources to work on some things. But I hope we'll really, even though we don't need to vote on this, I hope we'll all really look at the ideas that come out of this, because there might be other things that we need to think about pursuing
Right.
above and beyond whatever these grant funds are able to support in the short term, because this is just a big and difficult issue that we really need to be committed to continuing to focus on. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I look forward to hearing the ideas and look forward to talking with the sheriff department and city council, the police department, and community groups about how we can all work together to really continue to address this important issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is a discussion of the family leave policy, and Sharon Burke is with us to give us some updates on this and continue this discussion. We've been talking about this at several recent commission meetings.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you asked at the last, I think it was 2 commissioner meetings ago, that I go back out and get some more data and present it back to you. And the questions that you asked me was that do the counties that we got information from, do they offer any additional leave to do they offer family care in addition to the parental leave? What is the number of weeks they offer for both leaves? Do they follow the FMLA combined leave practices? What are the budget implications and considerations? And are they looking to increase the weeks that they offer? And the responses I got back was that New Hanover does offer parental. They do not offer family. They offer 6 weeks for parental leave. They follow the federal FMLA regulation, meaning that they do not offer additional weeks for couples that are married that work for their county. And they have not budgeted for any additional compensation for those that are participating in those leaves. And they have no intention of increasing that benefit. Wake County, again, offered parental. They did not offer family. They have a slightly higher. They offer 8 weeks. They also follow the federal guideline when it comes to FMLA. They did not provide us the number of employees that participated in their program. They have not budgeted for this, and they have no plans on increasing that benefit either. Mecklenburg, they offer parental. They also offer family. It's 6 weeks. They follow the federal FMLA. They stated that 266 employees used both family and parental leave. And since this afternoon, actually about 1:30, I received some more information from Mecklenburg, and about 188 employees are using the the family leave. So about 70-30, okay? They did not budget for this, and they have no plans on increasing. Durham, they offer parental. They don't offer family. They offer 12 weeks. They follow the family medical leave as stated by the federal government. They did not provide me the number of participants, and they did not budget, and they have no plans on increasing. So the notable findings is that all the counties, they do follow the federal regulation when it comes to the combined or shared leave benefit. 3 of the 4 counties chose to use the 8 weeks or less. Most of the counties do not offer the family care benefit. They all reported that they did not budget for this, and they acknowledged that overtime was occasionally occurred. So the recommendations of county leadership are, and before I say that, when we looked at our recommendations, we looked at this through the equity lens. So we recommend that we offer both parental and family care leave. The duration is 8 weeks for parental leave, 6 weeks for family care. That, and again, back looking at the equity lens, is that we enhance the federal FMLA benefit, so we treat both married couples that are employees for the county similarly. The ask for your consideration is, if you wish to implement this benefit, we would need to know what the decision is on this benefit. Would you choose to go merit or staggered? How many number of weeks would you like us to use? Is it going to be a shared benefit for the, in the FMLA? Weeks that both employees can use. The next step, if you approve, we would have a public hearing on November 17th, and that would be where you would vote to adopt. Questions for me?
Questions, commissioners?
Yeah, I've got one. So go back to the slide that's 8 weeks and your recommendations.
There we go.
So do we have any math done on that at all?
No, we had,
A best guess?
Could you clarify which math you're?
Well, when you go back to the others, you said there's no impact on budget. Sorry.
Okay.
so right
Just
now.
impact on budget, yeah.
Right now, we don't backfill when someone goes out on leave. They usually
Right.
take their PTO, and if they don't take their PTO, then it's unpaid leave. There is some overtime that's occurred. Some departments actually have built-in salaries, our HHS, some of
Sure.
our social. So, we wouldn't be looking at incurring any additional expenses other than the occasional overtime for required positions.
So, and this is your recommendation after all the discussion we've had, so?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And the other potential budget impact would be that over time, assuming we don't ever change any policies on this, that the amount of paid vacation would be quite a bit more, because right now people basically, if something comes up where they have a family situation comes up, if they don't have enough sick days or they basically need to use vacation days
Correct.
to deal with these kind of things. In the
Mhm.
future, they wouldn't need to, so people might end up monetizing those vacation days at a higher rate than we've seen in the past. So that's the other fiscal, kind of indirect impact of this, right?
Exactly. That could.
Commissioners, other questions? I've got just a couple of, it might turn into a question, but it might just be a comment. I appreciate this additional analysis and the thought that's gone into the recommendation. And I've tried to kind of dig into this a bit more and do some more, kind of get up the learning curve a bit more on this, because this is not an area where I have a lot of kind of pre-existing, experience or expertise or knowledge in this area. So, I'm very supportive of, I think, the general direction that this is going in. I don't think I have any questions about the parental leave piece. I think that's a good policy. We should do that. I'm open to the exact numbers we plug in there in terms of how long it is. I think the general recommendation around, if there are 2 people who are married who both work at the county, giving them the same benefits, I'm good with that. And I definitely want to see the county adopt a family medical leave policy to go along with the parental leave policy, a paid family leave policy. I guess the the questions I have to do with just some of the details around exactly what the family medical leave policy part might look like. As I was just spending some more time, going on the internet, how do different corporations and businesses do family medical leave? How do other, local governments, state governments, like how is this done around the country? And part of what I was, just impressed by is that there's just, of course, a broad spectrum of different ways that this is implemented around the country. So it's not just kind of, I don't think it's just kind of, either we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. There's a lot of different ways it could look. Some of the general things that, I kind of noticed when looking at this is that, for most places that offer parental leave, it is this sort of, if you're adopting a child or your family's having a child, you have this amount of time you can take off from work to spend that time, that key important time in a family, for a family together. And it's typically compensated at sort of the full rate of salary. A lot of places that do family medical leave, which is although that is clearly like a much smaller group of employers. Like there are lots and lots of businesses and units of government that offer parental leave. Like that's become sounds like a pretty mainstream policy in most companies and organizations. They offer that as a benefit. But family medical leave, paid family medical leave, is a much less common benefit that's offered within organizations. There's definitely a movement out there to kind of promote this for all the same reasons I think we're interested in it. And in a lot of different ways they've adopted it, like the state of California, it sounds like from what I was reading, it's been a real pioneer in this area. They were one of the first states that adopted paid family medical leave. A lot of other states have followed. In a lot of cases, like these states are treating it in almost kind of like an additional kind of insurance benefit to employers. So if something happens to you that affects your health or affects a person's health in your family, you can take this time off to deal with those health issues. Most places that do it they don't just pay their employees 100% of the salary they would have made if they take time off. It's kind of more like an insurance benefit where they get some compensation from that and it helps them manage that situation. There are lots of places that have clearly put thought into this from sort of an equity standpoint, where if you want to offer this benefit, it's one thing if you're an employee in an organization and you make a pretty high salary, to take a few weeks off or even a month or two off probably is something you can realistically do. But for a lot of people who don't make a real high salary, that's just not realistic. That you just can't do it because you can't go for a month or two without your salary. So a lot of places that have adopted these policies, while they may not simply replace their salary 100%, for lower wage workers and kind of middle of the road workers, they do fully pay it, or at least a very high percentage of it. But it's not necessarily an automatic, just you take this time off and you get your salary paid as if you were working. So anyway, I guess I just wanted to just sort of share that as I've tried to understand this issue better, I feel like there's a lot of different models out there for how this could be adopted, and I want us to do that. But in a way, I think this is an important decision. I think whatever we adopt here is going to it's a pretty significant new benefit to offer to county employees, and I think a lot of people will use it. So I guess I just am expressing that while I like some of the initial data that we've seen here, for a policy decision of this scope, in a way, I'd kind of like to have a chance to look at even more examples of what different businesses do, what different states do, because I think that there's just such a broad range that we haven't necessarily thought through those different options and what they would mean for the organization in terms of the benefits for the employees, as well as the capacity, how it affects the capacities of the organization. So anyway, those are a few thoughts I wanted to share. I don't really know if I have a question there, but I just wanted to make a comment. Mr. Penland?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, so I just want to make sure, so under the FMLA, they combine the leaves for married couples. Enhanced benefit says allowing same benefit. Is that what you're saying, that you think if married couples, they would both get whatever the weeks are?
Correct.
Okay. That was one of the concerns I had, is they both got the same. The thing about it is, I mean, we can keep researching and researching and researching, and all we're doing is just putting off something for our employees. If we were to have to do something in the next 2 weeks, I would like to see 8 weeks for both parental and family. Because the thing is, though, is I think right now, overtime-wise, our non-exempt get 80 hours of compensatory time off before we start paying them, correct?
They can cash that out.
So, but they can cash that out. So there's really no way to settle on a exact number. Okay. And, yeah, I think I would like to offer, if we'd have done this a month ago, I probably would have went 10 weeks, but I think the 8 weeks is a good landing point, having it both and making sure that married couples can have the same benefit.
Yeah.
So, and if you haven't had to take care of a sick parent, and I don't know who has, but I had to take care of my dad to be able to have this would be really good. I would think it would be, and that's why I would like to settle for 8 weeks for both parental and family. And let's put this thing, because all we're doing is just, we keep pushing this out. We can keep researching and researching what other people do, but let people start researching what Buncombe County did. So instead of us researching them, let's say, hey, this is what they're offering in Buncombe County. So.
Other comments?
Yeah, are you leaning towards, Chairman, are you leaning towards any percentages, or are you just, throwing out some, discussion?
I think it's a significant decision. I think looking at different ways of doing it would be valuable. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't land exactly where we are, but I do think that I think we would be adopting a policy that would be definitely a huge outlier. I don't think so. Correct me if any of the thing I'm about to say is not factually correct. Of the 100 counties in North Carolina, only one offers. Again, I'm all for the I don't have any questions about the parental leave. That's great. But on the family medical leave, of the 100 counties in the state, one offers this.
I don't have that data. What I did was I looked at our top 12, and any of the top 12 that provided information to us is what I'm reporting to you.
Okay, so we know of one, Mecklenburg.
Mhm.
None of the other
Yeah,
larger counties.
1 out of 4, correct.
Okay. Are you aware of any business, like any of the large businesses in Buncombe County, that offer a policy similar to this?
I'm not aware of it, no.
Okay. And Mecklenburg County just adopted their policy. So we can't, they haven't been doing it long enough to really look at it and say, okay, based on how Mecklenburg County's done this, we can have a pretty informed sense of how much time off our workforce will end up taking to utilize the benefit, right? They've been doing it so recently. That's a question we can't answer.
Yeah, they came back and said about 70% of the 266 number was used for family care. But it wasn't, they never provided me, was it the full, 6 weeks? It was.
Mecklenburg adopted their policy in 2018, so 2 years.
Okay. So if we, could we get that information from them? I mean, again, that's kind of what I'm mostly looking for, is just a place that has done kind of what we're talking about, where we can look at it and say, okay, every community is a little different, but this is another local government. Here's how they did it, and here's how here's what their experience has been. Here's how much time off their workers took to utilize this. Because my belief is that compared to the current federal policy, where you can take time off but you don't get paid. This is going to be significantly more utilized than the current policy because you're fully paid for your time, the time you take off. So there's a big incentive for people to take it. You know, if someone's family is going through a major medical emergency, I'm all for us supporting them and them taking that time off to do it and not having to worry about their income while they're doing it. I'm totally for that. I think the question I have is whether the criteria that are used for what people could take time off for is not just necessarily the most extreme medical conditions that people might envision when they think about this policy. And if there's data out there to show that that concern is not valid, I'd love to see it. But so far, I haven't seen that information. So that's why I have the question.
So I did ask them for that data, but it's not in their computer. They would have to do everything by hand, and what they were willing to give me was the 70/30.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Commissioner, we can write into any policy that you choose to adopt what the criteria would look like. So you could be a little bit more stringent on what you would allow them to take this for as well.
Yeah, I think you got to do that.
Well, when would we do that?
Want to give us some ideas? Now we can draft that policy so we can circulate that before we have a public hearing. But if I'm right,
That,
Drew,
I mean, that
think-
could very well address the question I have, is if we could sort of spell out, here are the kind of circumstances that we want people to be able to take this benefit and use it. Great, but if there was more definition around that, that might help address the concern. Because really, this is the only question I've got about it.
And we can go ahead and draft some language around that, because if I understand Mr. Fu right, he would want to make sure that whatever we publicize would be the factual policy. We would want to make sure the public knows that policy.
Okay, so you can get the information. I just Googled it. So, I mean, if you want to, just some of the things that are popping up, about 30% of tech workers had access to paid family leave, up from 23% from 2011. Bureau of Labor Statistics Survey, et cetera. Top Bloomberg companies, 100 companies in Fortune 500. There's different information out there with different specifics on it if you want to search businesses, and see what they're, see what they are and what the percentage is. It a HR benefit? Is it a, like insurance, or is it, other type of benefit? But you could get it. You could get that information probably pretty quick. Yeah,
For-profits would be offering something like this. It's your governments or your not-for-profits that typically don't jump right out.
But again, we're not aware of any businesses in Buncombe County that offer
that
a
I'm aware of,
policy like
correct.
this. Right. Okay.
The family side.
On the family medical leave,
Yeah.
the 6, 8, 10 weeks of paid family medical leave per year. All right. I've raised my questions. Any other comments or questions from other commissioners?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
ahead.
Jasmine.
No, you go ahead, Robert.
Well, my thing, did you find any of the data on how many couples they are working for the county?
So we don't have really good data on that either. But last year, we had 38 couples that actually used the parental leave.
Or,
can take that.
okay. And I agree with Commissioner Penland here, is to get this as quick as we can, because I think this board needs to decide on the 17th before a new board comes in, and then we've got a bunch of new questions arising and putting it off again. So I'm kind of looking at the recommendation, the 8-6 is about where I fall at.
Yeah, and the other thing about benefits is that this benefit can be created, and then it doesn't mean it's there forever. Whether it's a family leave, but we could get some additional information maybe to clear up some of the questions on the family leave side, I think, so.
In terms of where I'm at, I appreciate all the research and the discussion. In terms of where I'm at, I would support 10 weeks for parental leave, basing that on, that there's been a lot of research on that. That is a policy that has been sort of widely implemented from the federal government throughout Fortune 500 and 100 companies and a lot of communities as well. And 12 weeks is kind of considered the gold standard. And, as we think about the North Carolina context, to me, 10 weeks feels like a way to really respond to what we know the research says about what families need during that time, while at the same time kind of rolling it out as a new policy that we have to learn about. So that's where I land personally on the parental leave side. I'm in a similar place on the family leave as that. I think, this is one where I think it would be helpful to see some more details on how it might be structured. And I have appreciated how staff has brought forward that equity lens, particularly thinking about, say, employees who are earning in the lower 50% or 40 or 30% of salaries at the county, for whom benefits like FMLA, nice on paper, just don't really help them in a time of crisis. I've actually wondered if the federal COVID-19 policy we adopted, or that we're complying with, actually might be a model to look at, wherein you get 2 weeks of paid leave, I think, and then additional weeks at 2/3 pay based on sort of fairly specifically defined criteria. And if we could potentially explore a model like that where there was layered in some kind of criteria around income, so that 2/3 pay for someone making $90,000 might be workable. 2/3 pay for someone making $37,000 might be really, really tough to get by on. So that, I'm not wanting to overcomplicate this, but really do agree this is a sort of major policy initiative that will be rolling out and will become a model that people will look at locally and within the state. And I think if we do have an opportunity to try to dig a little deeper, and the conversations we've been having are what have sort of really prompted this set of questions. 2 months ago, I had a very different set of questions about this. But just to summarize that, I would be ready to move forward with supporting 10 weeks of parental, and then would request just sort of some additional content on paper from staff around how a family leave policy might be structured, and would be open to anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks for that.
So I'll comment on that. I don't think I'm at a position now where I'm going to want to recommend higher than your recommendation. So that would be my comments on.
Any other questions or comments right now?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna state this. I think the one thing I want to be really cognizant of is the perception and how this is received in the community at large. By and large, the community understands that there are some positions here that do have much higher salaries than others, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to be really cognizant from a transparency and accountability to our taxpayers, that we are really being thoughtful in the additional benefits that we are offering to our employees. At this point, I'm not going to say exactly where I fall right now, just waiting for that additional information, because I don't want to be held to that. But I am really hung up on the community perception of offering additional, much larger benefits without having the opportunity to really compare other benefits within our community.
I mean, you could tell us, Commissioner, because it's not a vote now.
I know.
We're not voting, so you could kind of give us an idea if you want to.
You're not going to trick me into that, Belcher.
Yeah.
Well, where I come from is that I think it's positive when you look at the parental and family leave. And I agree, we need to be transparent with the community, but we also should take the lead in taking care of our employees. I guess I come from, I don't know how they're doing it now. I've been retired 10 years, but before I left, we were given both. And I didn't see people taking advantage of it, like we said, because what we did when we first put it in place, we set a time limit on it. We said we'll try it for 1 year, see how it goes, if it's abused or whatever. But people did not take advantage of the family leave like we thought they would, some of us, but no. But whatever we do, I think we're going to be on the cutting edge. And I think it's up to us, we're one of the largest employers in the county, to set the example and to do it right, but to do it right. Now, I'm for doing both. I do hope we can bring back a little more information on the family leave. Now, the parental leave, that's pretty cut and dried. We know how that works. But I do think I would like to see us do both. And let's see if we can't do it, in the next, I would like to see us be able to put something in place by January and not
we need to
keep
vote on it.
kicking the can down the road. We need to do it. I think it's important that we do that.
Can I ask just a procedural question? Regardless of, so first of all, if we do have the public hearing in 2 weeks, we could vote on a policy that night if the commission was prepared to do that. Right, okay. Regardless of exactly when we vote on it, it could be in 2 weeks or it might be some other date. Is it important that the policy go into effect on January 1st, or is that just a really arbitrary date and we could really set it for whatever date we want?
Correct.
Okay.
It's the reason why we set January 1st was that the Emergency FMLA Act expires on December 31st.
And also, that's our benefit calendar as well. All
That's the
benefits for the
benefit
county.
calendar, yeah.
Okay. But it could start on February 15th or February 1st, or it could be, we could set it for any day.
Set it whenever you want to
Okay,
do it.
all right. All right, well, I appreciate everyone weighing in on this. Avril, do you have?
Just want to make sure we got clear direction on what do you want us to bring back? Are you looking for us to advertise for a public hearing for the 17th? Did we miss that deadline?
So
No, we
maybe-
actually did it, and do you want to?
Yeah.
We did advertise for a public hearing on the 17th.
We did.
Okay.
We did and left it open-ended that the commission would consider the parental and family leave up to 12 weeks.
Okay.
So it's sort of a fill-in-the-blank kind of situation there.
Okay, so we can hold the public hearing. I mean, what I'm hearing is everybody wants to do parental leave. Everybody wants to do paid family leave. There's no one up here saying we don't want to vote on a paid family leave policy. There are some questions about exactly what the details of that look like, but we could go ahead and hold the public hearing on consideration of these recommendations, or if they're tweaked a little bit based on some of the discussion. We can go ahead and do that, and then if at that meeting the commission is prepared to vote on a policy, we could deliberate it after the public hearing and have a
Right.
vote, or if maybe the commission, based on additional information, wants to take some more time. Those would both be options we would have, but we could
Yes.
have it on the
Right.
agenda for consideration.
Yeah, we need to do that, Chairman.
Okay.
We need to do that.
All right. Is there anything else you need from us this afternoon?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for your work on this. All right, next up is the CIP project update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is regarding the Avatum grant of easement to MSD. It also has to include a, am I wrong?
That's next.
This is the CIP.
We're not quite there yet.
Sorry.
It's okay. We'll get to it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon.
Man,
Hey,
Hope everybody's doing well. So we have department representatives here to talk about some capital projects and give some updates there for the board. And fortunately, I'm on the front end of this discussion. Normally, trash people are on the back end of processes, so I'm appreciative of that. There's a list, Max, if you'll cue that up, that'll summarize the projects that are going to be discussed here today. And as I said, we can turn through to the solid waste subtitle D vertical expansion. That's the project I'm here to talk about. So Max, thank you. So if you'll take a look at that, I'm sure you're thinking that's the prettiest landfill you've ever seen. And,
Yeah, that's
I
what I
would
thought.
agree with that. Commissioner Edwards, you remember the equipment demo we did last year? You attended. That was exactly. She was on compactor, did all kind of fun stuff. But this picture is courtesy of one of those vendors that participated, showcasing their services. So got that one for free. So that was always neat. So talking about the subtitle D vertical expansion, this is a good description of the overall layout of our subtitle D landfill. And this permit modification essentially gave us some additional airspace by increasing our side slopes from 4-to-1 to 3-to-1 slope angle. So that's something in the solid waste business, especially landfill, we're always looking for ways to gain capacity and to extend lives of our active landfills. So with that said, that permit modification allowed us to add approximately 4 years of landfill capacity in existing cells 1 through 6. So very, very cool project. It actually, volumetric-wise, added about 825,000 cubic yards. So substantially increased our revenue potential for that asset as well. And this, talk about kicking the can, it pushed out the need by several years for additional landfill capacity. Now we're walking back up to that can again, and we're going to have some more discussions about our needs coming up soon in the FY22 and 23 cycles, because we are going to need additional landfill capacity. So we're excited about those, some major projects coming up in solid waste, but very capital intensive as well. So when you think about, I'll do some country boy geometry here. So our existing slopes, as you can see from the picture, 4-to-1. When we got the permit modification, we went to 3-to-1. So going here to here, in our industry, that's called a sliver fill, because you're capturing that airspace in between those. We're blessed to have the staff that we have, because a lot of landfills don't even want to touch a project like this because it's tough. But we have the right people to tackle this project, and we're 50 to 60% through this project. We've wrapped around, as you can see. This is to the left of the pictures, the north-facing side, and we're approximately halfway through the sliver fill at this time. So budget is used for this project. We're obviously building haul roads, raising of gas well infrastructure for our collection systems, because you're changing finish grade, you've got to move your infrastructure up. So there's some costs there. Leachate infrastructure, slope stabilization. So after we finish, get a vegetative cover on the waste mass, and obviously some stormwater drainage to control those the erosion and stormwater. So that's the status of the project. We anticipate to be completed by end of year 2022, and there's some other major projects and initiatives that solid waste is looking at this time, including the landfill gas utilization. You know, we have a landfill gas to energy system in place that we pull the biogas off the landfill, and we're able to generate electricity. The landscape is changing there nationwide, so we've got a study going right now on the best utilization of our landfill gas moving forward. The purchase of power agreement with Duke Energy is coming to an end, the 10-year term next year, in the calendar year. So those conversations are happening now. We're benchmarking, we're looking at what other counties are doing, and the market development side there as well. But it's, you know, like a lot of industries, they're holding tight right now. You know, with the politicking, COVID, there's been some pumping the brakes to see what those opportunities are. But we're actively looking at that. We will be continuing on those studies, and we will keep you posted. So, is there any questions on the project at this time?
I don't think so. Thank you.
I'll be right back.
I do want to say, having been out to the landfill this summer and watching Dan's crew work on that project, it was really impressive. I was an equipment operator in the Army, and the level of skill that those guys are displaying is saving the county a lot of money. I wanted to brief you all today on the Inca Recreation Destination Project. Overall, this is a full-service recreation destination featuring athletic competition space, agricultural connections, greenways, cultural heritage engagement, and enhanced accessibilities. At this point, this project's been funded at $12 million. The funding match on that is $6 million from the TDA, $4.8 million from Federal Highway Administration Surface Transportation Block Grants, and an additional $1.2 million of local government money. The project, when all is completed, will include 3 turf fields capable of hosting 11 versus 11 soccer games, lighting for those turf fields, 4,000 feet of linear natural surface trails for internal park circulation, handicap accessibility upfits, and ADA compliance measures, additional parking, a challenge course, a Yelp court, a sports agility course, a new picnic pavilion with restrooms and Wi-Fi capability, a dog park, and a recreation quality multi-sport field targeted at hosting 11 versus 11 soccer games. It'll also include 2 bridge crossings over Hominy Creek, 2 miles of greenway, hard surface greenway, at least 10 foot wide and ADA compliant, and 7 lighting sets at Bob Lewis Ballpark. To date, we've installed the lighting at Bob Lewis Ballpark. We've purchased the lighting for the Buncombe County Sports Park. We're coordinating with the turf design company and Musco Lighting to come up with a plan for implementation, but really seaming together the design of those 2 systems to prevent any type of complications when we install the turf. We have at this point commenced design of the turf fields and our new multi-purpose fields. We've engaged topographic studies and underground utility surveys. We've completed a geotech study on the sites, and we have site design and construction documents to 30%. We also have electrical design coordination. We have tentatively selected a firm for the Inca Heritage Trail. We're still working on the contractual elements of that. We were delayed because of the impact of COVID on NCDOT's budget, and we were one of just a few projects regionally that was allowed to continue in this time period. We're awaiting completed legal due diligence on a number of fronts to advance the design, and we've also, for the overall project, begun planning a dog park, and construction will begin following selection of a firm for turfing. And we've worked to create some more parking near the general services facility and reoriented some of their fencing. So
Let me just comment before you move on. I mean, you mentioned very quickly that the Inca Heritage Trail is moving forward. The impacts of COVID, it might not have ended up that way. And so I want to thank you guys for your advocacy. I want to thank the community for that. You know, people didn't let go of that. It's a 2.5 mile, family destination, for people in the community, and you stayed on that. It could have easily been bumped out 5 years. And so, thanks.
well, we're happy to keep that project going. I think it'll be
That's right.
a flagship for the county once we're done.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. I think I'm next.
Afternoon.
Let me double check. here.
Afternoon.
Nope, Ferry Road. I'll be back.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Just a quick update on the Ferry Road project. As you're aware, Ferry Road is a property that the county owns, had been previously looked at for an economic development opportunity. However, in discussions with this board, we've moved forward with an RFQ, request for qualifications, from qualified contractors to give us alternatives for developing this site. So I want to focus on that language a little bit. This is looking for alternatives for possible development. The thought is that this would be multi-use development, so it could include residential, commercial, recreational purposes, institutional purposes, things of that nature. The RFQ does request specifically recommendations related to multimodal transportation, so sidewalks, roads, entrances and exits to the property. That RFQ went out on the street last Friday. We'll be on the street until 11/20, so it's a 3-week RFQ. As a reminder, a request for qualifications is different than RFP, request for proposals, so no cost is included in that. But we're looking forward to what comes back in terms of qualifications, and we'll proceed. We'll bring that back to the board for additional discussion as required. Any questions?
I just got a comment. Y'all gonna miss me, aren't you? Y'all miss me. You are. So a lot's changed since this previous discussion about what this property could be used for. So I'm gonna challenge this board to be very, very practical when it comes to what goes here as far as investments of the tax dollars for the county. With what you're getting ready to update us on, it totally changes that property. You gotta, really back away from it and kind of let that, and kind of see what happens. Because you got, Pratt & Whitney coming, so.
Never heard of
It
it.
makes a big difference there, so. And you got another, so maybe the vision you had for this may end up being on the other 1,000 acres. Somebody may come in and offer you a ridiculous amount of money for that now, so hang in there, okay? Hang in there on this property. So.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. And the purpose of this study really is to bring the commission options
Sure.
to see what the future holds. So, if no questions, thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, Tim.
Joe,
Let's try this again.
you're right.
Yes, my turn.
Yes, sir.
Try this again. And I need to state for the record, and upon advice of legal counsel, I'm not a Clemson fan. This is an emergency mask. My other one was drying, so
Oh.
I can't have Dane of them walking out here saying I'm a Clemson fan.
Easy now. Remember, this is you're probably on film. So.
I'm not anti-Clemson. I'm just not pro.
Oh, that was a good recovery. Good job.
I want to give you a quick update on a project that we're working on. It's to fill a gap in our public safety radio coverage in the Garen Creek area. We budgeted about $1 million for this project. It was approved, I think, year before last. We did several site analysis. That's that top one. We completed that. We identified an existing site, which is a state Viper site that we're able to locate on. So we don't have to acquire land. We don't have to construct a tower. So our goal is to actually come in well under budget on this project because our initial budget allowed for the acquisition of land and the construction of a tower. So if things go the way we planned, we look to save money on this project. We've been slow go on the legal agreements. We do have the agreement completed with the YMCA Blue Ridge Assembly. Also happy to say that thanks to Chief Penland, also got the second bullet, the road right-of-ways, got that in today. And that was another big one. We had to get both of those complete before we could actually do our submittal to the state because they were requiring us to get those two things complete. So got those two complete. Now we're on to the state, which they've already given us tacit approval. I don't foresee that being a problem. And then once we do that, simultaneously, we're also getting regulatory approval from the FCC to be able to transmit off of that tower. And we anticipate getting that approval. Our initial target was the end of this month. And as far as I know, we're still on schedule for that. Once all the legal stuff gets done, that's when we actually put shovels in the ground and start doing stuff. So I've been working with General Services on generators, pouring concrete pad, getting the necessary equipment to go along with that. So our goal is to be up and running by the end of Q2, by the end of June. Any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As you may recall, we're doing a handful of solar projects you may have heard of once or twice. So not a whole lot to update you on. The last few weeks since the approval of the funding have really been about getting the agreements in place to get ready to do the projects. Had to get MOUs in place with all of the agencies, AP Tech, Asheville City, Buncombe County Schools, et cetera. Also working to negotiate the actual contract with MB Haynes. All of that's been done. Just very recently, we got our contract executed. So right now, we're in the process of developing interconnection request and construction schedule. That interconnection request is really sort of step one for us. We really need that to get done for a lot of reasons. We actually had, of course, we have to request permission to connect to the grid in order to get these projects done. It also gives us that opportunity to get in the queue for the rebates. So that's big step one for us. But once we get rolling and boots are on the ground, we expect about an 18 to 24 month full construction timeline. So that's it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much. I don't see any.
Got it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I think I have 8 projects today that we'll be talking about. First one is the 3-building exterior project. It's basically a exterior remediation of 3 facilities that Buncombe County owns. This facility here at 200 College Street, the detention center, and the historic portion of the courts complex. Project does similar things at all 3 locations, basically sealing up the outsides of the building, prevent water infiltration, repairing things like failed sealant joints, mortar joints, broken masonry, painting any paintable features on the exterior of the facilities, and then finally when we're done we'll wash them all and get them looking really nice. This facility, I want to mention, a lot of the work during this scope was exploratory in nature. We knew we had some issues on the exterior of the building with water infiltration. We weren't sure what a lot of those were until we got in. You've probably seen us out here on lifts removing pieces of masonry, and realized that a lot of what is behind the scenes, so to speak, on this building were installed wrong when it was originally constructed. So just be aware you'll see it pop back up on a capital outlay for some more exterior repairs. The other 2 facilities, the work's pretty much what we expected. The courthouse, obviously being nearly a 100-year-old facility, has things that pop up, but we kind of expected them all. And the beauty of that project, we combined them all. It's being done by a construction manager at risk, so they assume the risk. We're not going to go over budget, in other words. The project is moving along, and we're hoping to complete it by the end of the year next year. The courthouse project will obviously be the most lengthy of those 3 facilities. Comprehensive facility assessment you guys have heard before. We've performed all of the 3D scans of all the county facilities to document what space we have and what it's currently being used for. That'll give us sort of a current conditions portfolio that we don't necessarily have with some of the moves that have happened around the county. It also does a conditions assessment for all the county facilities, which helps us to build out a 15-year capital plan to know what we need to do over the next 15 years. And provides a space management plan for all the facilities so we can make sure we're utilizing those as efficiently and effectively as possible. And another portion of that is to provide a master plan for the library system during it. Project is underway and scheduled to complete in March of 21. And I believe there's a briefing just for this project we're trying to get in front of you guys in January is what we decided, and then a final presentation in March. So. East Asheville Library replacement project, to replace the old facility there with a new one. Project's underway and moving along really fast. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to drive by there, but that picture in the top left was last week, and if you go today it looks completely different because it's painted and some of the finish grading is starting to happen, and it's been a really good project. Part of that project also adds a crosswalk across US 70 from the end of Governor's View Road to the fire department there at Avon Road, which will help, safe access to the library for the community on the other side of US 70 there. So that project is scheduled to complete early in 2021. A fleet services complex for general services. We're trying to relocate the fleet services division of general services out next to the transfer station. The new transfer station's created a lot of traffic out there, and it's really busy for county employees taking their vehicles there, the sheriff's department, ambulances, and that sort of thing to get repaired, as well as the general services staff there. And there's Dane already left, but it smells really bad out there to everybody who's not in the trash business. So that's. We're also looking at the possibility of combining the other 2 divisions of general services, being building maintenance and grounds maintenance, at that facility as well. If we can, that would free up the use of those 2 facilities for another purpose. Project is in design. We have selected an architect firm and have had several meetings now, so it's moving along.
So you don't have a location for it yet?
We're looking at the old landfill in Woodfin, next to the firing range that we built down there, because it's space that the county already owns.
How much acreage does it need?
Does it need?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember, to be fair, what we settled on. Do you 5 acre plot?
Okay.
Lester Patrol office renovations. So that's a design for an expansion for the sheriff's operations out at Lester Crossing at 339 New Lester Highway. Part of that would be to expand the evidence storage area. That'll allow the sheriff's department to discontinue the use of storage containers for evidence. They'll be able to get it in climate-controlled, secure locations. We'll also look at patrol office renovations, adding an emergency generator to the building, and then other security upgrades like extending the fencing and that sort of thing. That project is underway. We've done interviews with the staff and sent out some surveys to the staff of that building to kind of see what their current and future needs will be. And we're hoping to complete the design portion in spring of '21. Parks and Recreation projects, FY20. Project was originally to add HVAC to the restrooms at the Inca Sports Park and Owen Park so they could use them year-round. We came back at a later date and added bringing three-phase power into the Inca Sports Park to that as well because the HVAC came in way under budget, and we weren't really expecting that. But the HVAC additions are complete, and we're just awaiting some easements, and then the three-phase power project will begin. Repairs for libraries. So that was making several repairs to 3 different libraries. One was replacing the chiller at Pack Memorial Library. That portion is complete. Repairing some failed windows at Fairview Branch Library. You can see in that photo where they're all hazy. That portion is complete as well. Repairing a lot of wooden trim out at Fairview Library that was rotten and just looked really bad, and we have completed that as well. And when all that's finished, painting and staining the exterior at Fairview and North Branch will get repainted as well. And, that's the only remaining portions of that project will be painting. We're waiting on some pricing to come back. And then, of course, now weather will be the next thing to fight there. But and roof replacements, looking to replace the 2 roofs, one at West Asheville Branch Library and the other at 94 Cox Avenue, which is the tax office. Both of those roof systems are nearing the end of their lives and starting to have leak issues. And we had originally, when we got that project, we had kind of held waiting on the facilities assessment to come back and kind of be the driver for that. But as the maintenance issues have continued to happen and with the solar projects coming up, we're going to head and push that to the front. So we got a contract with the firm finalized on 10/27. We're looking at 45 to 60 days for design and then about 30 days for completion. I actually spent the better part of the day at West Asheville on the design of that roof, so it's moving along well. I think that's it. Do you have any questions?
Don't see any. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Mr. Frew. Easement to MSD.
We'll try again. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
And Max might have a map, I'm not sure. This is property several years ago, April 2017, this board granted an economic development agreement to Avatum Technologies. That property is now, there we go, traded names to Black Mountain Center for Research and Technology. In that, the company committed to invest $20,400,000 and create 551 jobs beginning January 1st, 2022. The county had committed at that time to support the project with incentives of $881,960 over 5 years beginning in 2022. So that's moving along. What we're here for today is to let you know that November 17th, I want to bring to the board easements for MSD and waterline easement to the town of Black Mountain. We're doing that because the county was required as part of the grant process, the grant funds from the U.S. Department of Commerce to hold the title to the area where the easements were located and the improvements were to be built. So those are complete now and have been accepted by MSD and by the town. So we just need to convey those interests to MSD and the town of Black Mountain respectively. And just to let you know where this is, it's right past the Ingalls Warehouse, right off Highway 70, and then a portion of the larger portion is south of I-40. So it's 5 easement areas for MSD and for the town of Black Mountain for water easement. And I'll piggyback on that and just let you know, we just heard the report that they're working on 3-phase power to run into the sports park. So we want to bring also an easement for that on the 17th, because they're all in a hurry for Duke to get that in the ground and get it to the sports park.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Yes, sir.
All right, last item is Tim Love's going to talk to us about the Pratt and Whitney announcement.
Good afternoon. We've got a presentation that we'll walk through today. The purpose of this is to provide kind of a preview for what's coming at the November 17th meeting. The November 17th meeting is a public hearing for this board to consider economic development incentives for Pratt and Whitney regarding their project that they're bringing to Buncombe County. So what we wanted to do is spend a few moments just to talk publicly about what's planned, but of course, none of this is final until this board votes on it. So in terms of some background, on October 22nd, Pratt & Whitney announced that it has chosen Buncombe County for its location. For those that don't know, Pratt & Whitney, they manufacture aircraft engines and power systems. But in general, you know, they're making parts that go into jet engines, generally speaking, commercial jet engines, although they do have some military sales as well. Pratt & Whitney is a well-known name in aerospace. They're a Fortune 39 company, about 40,000 employees, and in 2019, about $21 billion in revenue. In April of 2020, Pratt & Whitney was part of a company called UTC, United Technologies, but in April of 2020, that company merged with Raytheon. So during this recruitment, Pratt & Whitney became a part of Raytheon Technologies in April of 2020. But the company that's coming to us is Pratt & Whitney. What's really important about this, and it's been said before, but this further bolsters Asheville, Buncombe County, as an aviation destination in the Southeast. With GE Aviation and some of our other firms, we're really on the map for this type of work and this skill set. In terms of the project, here's some quick details. Pratt & Whitney will construct a 1 million square foot facility in Biltmore Park West. In the process, they will create 800 new jobs in our community, and they will invest $650 million, over $500 million in our community in business, personal property, and facility construction. The average wage of these jobs is $68,000, which is about $32.70 per hour. All of this comes together to create a labor impact on an annual basis of about $54 million in our community. Additionally, there's some one-time impacts that are important too that we wanted to call out, but those won't be with us forever, and those relate to the construction. And so that's estimated as almost 600 jobs that will be created just from the construction alone of this 1 million square foot facility. The big tagline at the bottom, I think, is really important. This aligns to the Board of Commissioners Strategic Plan, Buncombe 2025, specifically around the areas of driving higher average wages in this community, as well as creating additional new jobs in this community. So it furthers that commitment that this board has created in the strategic plan. Talked a lot about the company, but where are we? Where does this sit? And so this is a quick diagram to show you kind of where the property will sit. You can see I-26 in the diagram. If you're going south down I-26 or going towards Biltmore Park from where we're at today, right there on the right, kind of as you cross the French Broad River, you'll see that box. And Pratt & Whitney will be located in that box of about 100 acres. So as you're going down I-26 south towards Biltmore Park, it'll be there on the right. Additionally, you can see that there's a bridge infrastructure that's planned. If you continue looking towards the right, that bridge will connect the property to Brevard Road, right around where the Arboretum is, just to try and orient y'all. To Commissioner Belcher's point earlier, can't see it on the map, but not too far from that Arboretum, going north, would be the Ferry Road property. So what does Pratt & Whitney do? I'm not an expert on aerospace, but I do want to share at a high level kind of what they'll be doing in Buncombe County. And specifically, they're going to be doing work to support their GTF, Geared Turbofan engine. Again, I'm not an expert. What I can tell you about this is through technology, they create airfoils that go in the turbine of the engine that allow the engine to just push more power with less fuel. The way they accomplish this is through a bunch of engineering marvels, which include decoupling a fan from a turbine to produce more power. The end result is kind of on the left. So, fuel efficiency, 16% increase, less nitrous oxide emissions, and a reduction in the noise footprint. So overall, faster, stronger, cheaper, quieter, more fuel efficient. This is the future of engines, if you ask Pratt & Whitney, and we believe it is as well. So in terms of, how did we incentivize Pratt & Whitney to come to Buncombe County, these are the terms that this board will consider at the November 17th public hearing. So from a performance standpoint, Pratt & Whitney's commitment is to 800 new jobs, $650 million in investment, and an average wage of $68,000. I've hit on that earlier. From a Buncombe County perspective, the incentives that are proposed total $27 million over not to be less than a 10-year period, which is about $2.6 million a year. The payout structure for this is critically important. This agreement is set up as a pay-for-performance model, which means that as Pratt & Whitney creates jobs, they will be incentivized. If they miss targets, they will be prorated so that they're only paid for what they accomplish. We will not be front-loading those incentives, and we will only be paying for what they deliver based on their goals, which is of critical importance to this board. We've talked high level about the impacts. We know what the direct jobs are, but there's other impacts of this project that are important to talk about as well. So the 800 jobs is a great number, but there's a number of indirect and induced impacts that will come from this. Suppliers that work with Pratt & Whitney. There's expected new payroll associated with those companies that will move here or support Pratt & Whitney. The tax impacts at the local level, of course, we focus on property tax locally, but at the state level, there will be additional tax implications that are positive, as well as at the federal level. The construction supports at the bottom, which I mentioned, something like 1,000 total direct, indirect, and induced jobs just from constructing the facility. Some one-time tax impacts ranging from $1.3 million at the local level to almost $10 million at the federal level. A lot of benefits that will benefit our region, our state, and our local community. In addition, a key part of this, for Pratt & Whitney to have 800 jobs in Buncombe County, they're going to need a workforce that's from, Buncombe County. To see that through, they're partnering with AB Tech for customized training so that folks can go through an AB Tech program and be able to go to Pratt & Whitney for employment. AB Tech is committing to a training program of 10 years, as well as a training facility that's located near Pratt & Whitney in order to ensure that there's folks have access to training. Additionally, we anticipate that this project will have ripples that will continue to feel for years, much the same way that Commissioner Belcher has sort of talked about the impact of GE Aviation and how that set us up for this opportunity. The final aspect is the reality is Pratt is a very large employer. I said they're a Fortune 39 employer. And so we expect that through that, there's going to be benefits when we talk about corporate philanthropy, hiring practices, competitiveness in our region, the impact that these wages will have on other employers. We think that there's a lot of indirect benefits that are important to note that we're not going to quantify for you today, but we think that we'll see over time. So overall, a number of impacts worth noting. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the partners included in this, and these are just some of those partners: the State Department of Commerce, AB Tech, the Golden Leaf Foundation, Biltmore Farms, the Economic Development Coalition, the Community Betterment Foundation, and of course this Buncombe County Board of Commissioners, who will consider support for this company on November 17th. In terms of our final next steps, the notice of public hearing for the November 17th hearing went out yesterday. So we're currently on the schedule for November 17th. During the November 17th public hearing, this commission will have a formal vote on the economic development agreement and incentives that we've described in this presentation. That concludes my presentation. If there's any questions or comments, I'd welcome those.
Thank you, Tim. Commissioners, any questions? Just one thing to, maybe if you could just say a few words about. So the county has an economic development policy and to encourage higher paying jobs in the region, jobs that pay better than the average wages in Buncombe County, but as well as for investment in equipment, right? Because we collect taxes off of that $650 million investment, and a lot of that's in equipment. So while there's an incentive, we in essence have a mechanism to recoup that through the actual investment in equipment, which they'll be paying property taxes on over time. So we expect the county to be financially made whole by the property taxes that'll be generated by the project over time. I mean, is that right, or would you just like to kind of share any kind of just details on how that formula, we look at that to calculate how much the county will financially benefit from it from a taxpayer standpoint?
Absolutely. When we look at a deal like this, we look for the county to recoup its incentive spent strictly through property tax. We don't count sales taxes, federal, state taxes. We're just looking at how our Buncombe County balance is paid back. And so we've worked through those cash flows and believe that if all goes well, this is a 10-year deal for us that will pay out. So very positively favoring that. To your point, the jobs are what we're trying to drive as well, and those high-wage jobs, but those jobs don't necessarily pay us back directly in the same way that property tax does.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
So we expect that, I mean, if we want to use the term cash flow, in the third year, around there.
That is correct.
And again, we don't pay any money out until that equipment's going in and they're hiring and they hit all these checkpoints.
That's right. We define a specific schedule for the company that we adhere to throughout the cycle of the agreement for jobs and capital investment.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioners, that concludes all the items on our agenda. So let's adjourn this meeting, and we'll be back at 5 o'clock for our regularly scheduled meeting.